First of all, I would like to thank you for accepting us here in the European Parliament. And I couldn't start our interview in a different question rather than asking about the financial situation and how do you perceive it at the moment in Germany regarding mainly the differences between the northern countries and the southern ones. And how does this affect the future of Eurozone?
To come to a common currency, and I think the euro has shown that it is a good thing. It has shown it in the Asian crisis, even more than 10 years ago. It has shown in the last crisis as well that we have more stability than other zones like the dollar zone or even in Asia. So the euro is a good thing, and I do not want to separate it in the northern and the southern part. On the other hand, what we have to do now is to find a solution that we can give a signal inside to the people that it is a strong currency and it will be a strong currency in the future as well. And on the other hand, to show the financial markets that they can do whatever they want, but they will not have any chance to speculate or to bet against the euro. And that is what we have to achieve now.
How are you going to achieve that? And do you think that the euro already has received too many attacks from the markets, not even, of course, from America and Asia?
Of course, there have been a lot of attacks against the euro. Why? Because we are Europeans and we have a lot of sovereign states who are dealing with the euro, a lot of politicians who are dealing with that. In the dollar area, you have only a few people who are dealing with that. It's only Mr. Bernanke who is announcing what's going on with the dollar. But the markets are not as speculative as they are in the eurozone, where they have a lot of information available as Europe needs time to decide. For example, one can accuse Germany, who said, we have to prepare insolvency measures for banks who have to participate if a haircut for a state has to be done. But then markets are asking, what does it mean? And they are testing that. And therefore I think firstly Europe should concentrate that only a few persons who are dealing with that. Mr. Juncker for the euro countries, Mr. Trichet for the European Central Bank, of course Mr. Rehn for the European Commission are those who are speaking. Secondly, I think we should agree that we have to strengthen the Stability and Growth Pact. And the third thing is, of course, if we are strengthening the Stability and Growth Pact, we have to improve the question how to deal with a capital which is engaged in states who has bought state bonds. And I think that are the three things we have to take care. And then I think markets will recognize that the eurozone is not the worst currency. The worst currency or the worst currency we have on the moment is the dollar, of course. The public debts of the United States of America is 11% of the gross national product. We have some states who are bankrupt, like California, the largest one, is the highest population. So if you look with the same criterions we look to the euro, to the dollar, everyone should agree that the dollar has more problems than the euro. But that means that we have to solve our regulatory problems and to give a strong signal to the markets, we have solved it, so don't bet against us, you will lose.
Which are the intentions of Germany from the Eurozone in this particular moment where there is this huge credit crunch around? Which are the intentions? What does Germany want to succeed this particular moment?
I think Germany has two problems. Problem number one is that we can't solve all problems on the shoulders of the taxpayers, and that is especially a discussion in Germany. As the promise in the 90s was that the stability of the euro will not be guaranteed by the taxpayers, it has to be guaranteed by the economics and the fiscal policy of each member state joining the eurozone. Secondly, which you have to take into account is that we have accusing against the government on the highest court by helping Greece and helping the eurozone. So Germany needs good arguments why they did that. Otherwise, if the highest court in Germany says no to this help, we will have even more problems than we have today. So please accept that the German Chancellor has to take care what's going to be discussed on the highest court in Germany.
The moment that Eurozone faces this crisis, and obviously there are many conflicts regarding the currency, the euro, Germany is the only one which succeeds in developing its exports and making progress in its economy. Isn't that contradictory?
It's not contradictory, because if you take into account why Germany is so successful for the moment, it is not a short-term issue, it's a long-term issue. In the last 10 years, the income of workers in Germany was not growing. It was on the same level, only for inflation rate was given. In other countries, we had increasing of the payment of workers for even 30% in Spain. And so we got competitiveness, other areas lost it. We have reshuffled our whole labor sector, especially the question of the rights of workers, reducing them. So we have done a lot of measures in the last, especially 5 years, since Angela Merkel is Chancellor in Germany, to improve our competitiveness. And what we see for the moment is that we have a great success with this policy, but it was not a short-term issue, it was a long-term issue, and that means that every state who has some microeconomic and macroeconomic possibilities has to use it to be competitive in a common currency area.
You mentioned before that Eurozone is one. How do words like what Angela Merkel said last week, that Greece should never get into the Eurozone at the first place, help this union?
Of course, and I was in politics on European level even in the 90s when we had the decisions on who joins the euro, what are the rules for joining the euro, how are they kept, how are they calculated. And of course it was especially a discussion between France and Germany, which economical model stands behind the euro, and one can say it is the German model which became the euro model. But on the other hand, coming from Germany, I think the Deutsche Mark was not the worst currency of the world, and we are used to that state has not the chance to take too much influence, especially on the ratio to other currencies. But France had another culture, another approach, and that was a fault, of course, in the 90s. And sometimes I have the feeling that's coming up again. And we have to answer the question whether national fiscal policy, national taxation, national economic policy, and European currency fits together or not. And for the moment, I have the feeling we recognize that we need more Europe, more harmonization in fiscal policy, in taxation policy, and economics than we had in the last decade if we want to protect the euro. And that is the battlefield I see for the moment. And of course there are various approaches. So a state-driven economy like France, a market-driven economy like Germany, to say it very roughly, or even a British model, which is not, I think, our model in continental Europe.
Yeah.
That is the fight for the moment. And as long as we have not answered this question, how much Europe is necessary to protect common currency, we will have attacks from the financial markets. And that is the question to answer. And I think, therefore, Greece has to give a lot to us, because they have a lot of experience. Your country is one of those who is a bridge between various economical areas, who always had advantages out of these possibilities. But on the other hand, it is a country who had a huge burden to bear, as it has a lot of debts on the shoulders, and that is something which have to solve together, because always the problems will be on the table of every member of the Eurozone, and we can't say that's only a Greece or only Ireland or only a Portuguese problem. That will never function.
Okay. When do you think that the private sector would contribute in the mechanism of dealing with the credit crunch, and how?
Don't ask me how. There are a lot of possibilities, but I will not mention
the most
because
obvious
markets.
Scenarios.
Yeah, but for the debts which are or the bonds which are sold for the moment, you can't introduce something like that because that was not calculated, and you have to give the market the chance to calculate it. And then we will see what's going to happen, whether it's really functioning. But on the other hand, that we are in the hands of banks. What is the experience now in Ireland? Mm-hmm. I think that is not what taxpayers want to be. Taxpayers do not want to be in the hand of banks. They want to have responsible politicians who can decide what is necessary and not what is necessary for banks. And I think that is the first thing. And that means we have to introduce regulation which allows that the banking sector has to pay its contributions as well. It's not only the question to earn money. Yeah, no risk, no fun. It's one of those regulars in financial markets. Mm-hmm. If you want to have high interest rates, you have higher risk. And that means that at the end you have to take your burden as well. And what I don't accept for the moment is that the bank sector and the private sector says, I want to have all the interest rates as much as possible, but if there are problems, they are the taxpayers protecting me, and that will not function. And therefore we have to invent rules, but I will not mention it here, because we have to decide it and then say it to the public.
Okay, Mr. Ferber, thank you very much.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.